Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Jake, and I am going to be our moderator for today. We're going to give it a few minutes for everybody to join, and then we will get started. In the meantime, if you want, feel free to add in the chat, introduce yourself, or share maybe where you're reaching out from, or one thing that you have done to recognize DVAM this month. Y'all give us just 1 minute, having a couple of technical difficulties with our Zoom in general. Not sure how other folks use Zoom, but it is not always the most functional and sometimes does create some issues. So if you'll give us just one moment, we will get started soon. Okay. Um, 1 moment, gonna make a pivot with our sign language interpretation just to make sure everyone can access that. And I'm going to pin the interpreters so that anyone can see them. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Zoom sometimes just does not want to work in the ways that we would like it to. But regardless, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar we're having during Domestic Violence Awareness Month with Survivors Always, supporting survivors in the moment and beyond. I'm really excited about this conversation that we're going to have. I'm really excited about the panelists that have joined me today. But before we get into that, I do just want to make a couple of announcements. Like y'all have seen, we do have ASL interpreters available. They are pinned, and so for anyone who needs them, that is available. We also will have time at the end of the conversation for some questions. And so if you have questions for our panelists, things you want to know more about, please use the Q&A function in Zoom at the bottom of the toolbar. You can put your questions there and we will get to as many as we can at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and so if you will be able to watch it again, revisit it, it will be sent out in an email to everyone who attended. So if you have to leave early or if you come in late, there will be a recording that you can watch at your pleasure. And then lastly, we do have a couple of things just want to make sure everyone is aware of. One is that everything that is said here in this conversation, I'm so sorry. Everything that is said is our opinion. It is shared from us and it is not reflected in any of the grants or funders that are paying that help fund the hotline. And so everything that is said is our own opinion and does not necessarily reflect that of the Administration for Children's Family Services. Lastly, what we'll be talking about can be a challenging topic. We will be talking about abuse, difficult moments that people have experienced, challenges they've experienced. And so please do take care of yourself, whether that means you need to step away for a few minutes, or if you need to get some water, get a snack, something, whatever you need, please do take care of yourself. We hope that this conversation will be beneficial and helpful for everyone, but we do want to make sure that everybody takes care of themselves as well. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. I am Jake Crowther-Dixon. I'm the content manager at the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and I will be moderating our conversation, and then I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And so, Alexis, if you'd like to start us off, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Smith. I am the former Miss Kansas 2024. Super excited to come back and join again today. Had a couple opportunities this past year, but as I continue the advocacy work, I utilize my platform, Respect for Claims, advocating for healthy relationships.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexis. And then, Shandi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Shandi. I just retired from the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders where I was on it for 6 years. I got the privilege of going on some USO tours and to Pro Bowl, but I thought that organization and that platform was amazing in letting me use my voice the way I want to use it and get my story out there. So I'm just very thankful to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Shandi. And then lastly, Daniela, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, Jake. Sorry about that technical difficulties. I'm so honored to be here with you all. I'm Daniela Ramirez. I'm a vice president at Spitfire Strategies. We are a social justice communications firm, and we have the honor of working closely with the hotline and helping the media frame the conversation around domestic violence in ways that are trauma-informed and not harmful and destigmatizing, and just honored to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So with that, we can kind of get into the conversation. And so the first one, kind of a more general question, but the theme for this year's Domestic Violence Awareness Month is with survivors always. And so I'd love if y'all could share maybe what does that theme mean to you? Alexis, if you'd like to start.
Absolutely. So for me, it means truly standing and embodying what it means to be an advocate alongside other survivors in whatever shape, way, or form that fits for you, because it is a challenging position to be in. An example I have for that is this past in October, I went to a Purple Mile walk where I got to be a keynote speaker, and it was only my second Purple Mile walk, but it's been in a duration of several years. And families that have lost individuals to domestic violence continue to show up in that space, one, to advocate for their family member, but two, to also continue to advocate alongside other family members. And the event only continues to grow. And so that is an incredible example of continuing to actually physically stand with survivors and share that pain, to continue to advocate for others.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great example, and thank you for sharing that. Shandi, would you like to share what the theme means for you?
So I guess when I first read that and like heard it, I thought it was really cool because it was like you have an army behind you, basically standing with you and advocating with you, and for all those who have unfortunately been through this. I think with my journey and just sharing everything, getting to know other survivors or other individuals who maybe had a mom or sister or brother who went through something similar or the same thing. Um, it's a very close knit community. And I think all those types of people, which unfortunately, this kind of affects a lot of people in the world. Almost everyone I feel like I've talked to now has some story to go along with domestic violence, but it's always like, they always come out stronger. I have so much more respect and love for them, and I want to help them, and I want to help this community. And so I think that this whole with survivors always is just like, yeah, like everyone's with you, like everyone has your back. You're not alone in this, and we're always going to be supporting you no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very, very true and really highlights that it's even after GVAM ends. Once the month is over, we are still with survivors because it is always. But yeah, Daniela, I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on the theme as well.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, for me, coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective with survivors always just makes me grounded in the truth that, in my role as a storyteller and working with the media, that every survivor is an expert in their own experience, and letting them be the driving force behind how their story is told, having a seat at the decision making table, setting clear parameters around what's comfortable and what's not comfortable. And because of somehow some ways the public conversation on this can go, doing some reporter education along the way, and just playing my role and taking that responsibility seriously, to defend and protect survivors as much as I can when they're already doing such a generous thing of sharing their personal story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very good point and very important to recognize that everyone has a role to play in this and that everyone has a job to do when it comes to standing with survivors and supporting survivors, whether it is in the media, at your job, with your friends or family. We all do have a role to play, and we all have a way that we can stand and support with survivors. So yeah, thank y'all for sharing that with me. Um, so my next question, I was curious, well, Alexis and Shandi, you both did share about your experience, a very personal, intimate moment with countless individuals. I mean, Alexis, you were very public in front of a huge crowd and go viral on social media, sharing about your experience. Shandi being on a TV show, like, and in a very like public persona. These were moments that really require a lot of strength and comfort almost with sharing that. And I am kind of curious, was there anything that you both experienced or something that helped you feel maybe as ready as you could be to share in that moment or feel empowered to talk about your experience in such a public way? I don't know if one of y'all wants to go first.
Yeah, so for me, I honestly, the video that you're talking about, I wasn't going to share that video initially. I was kind of embarrassed by the situation that happened at Miss Kansas, because it was kind of, I had these individuals that supported me. Then I also had individuals that said, did she plan this? Is this even real? Was this just for a title? And so I kind of just wanted to keep that moment to myself, and really reflect on everything that happened because it was so unexpected. But it was my family. For those that don't know, I come from a family cycle of abuse. Every single woman in my life has been victimized by physical domestic violence, where mine was emotional. And it was a woman in my life who said, no, this is really powerful. You have the ability to connect with others just by the way that I was able to connect with my family. And so I saw it as an opportunity to kind of empower myself while empowering my family and kind of seeing what direction it was going to take. And it took, you see the both sides, but ultimately, I would say it was a very positive narrative that I was able to connect with so many different individuals, and that really empowered me to say, okay, my story does matter. It doesn't have to be physical domestic violence for it to be empowering. And it was kind of bittersweet to be able to have that opportunity to continue to share my story and advocate for others.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think bittersweet is a good description for it because it is something that helps others feel seen. And it's also sharing a very painful experience that you've had and that other people in your family have shared. So I think that is a great description. Thank you for sharing that. Shandi, what was it that helped you maybe feel prepared or empowered as much as you could to be open about that?
Um, it was scary for sure. I think I started a little bit of therapy before going into my last season, and I did one like small podcast with a girl I knew through cheer. And so like that was kind of dipping my toes in the water about talking about it and being like, okay, like I talked about it, like I'm okay. My emotions are still okay. Like maybe I reached someone. Um and at first when we first started the show, I was nervous about it. I was nervous to share my story. It's already such a big show, reaches a lot of people, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be like a lot of people judging me. But I remember after I got the phone call that my abuser was not charged with anything, able to walk free, basically. I think that lit a fire in me where I called the director and I was like, okay, I'll share this. Like, it's my turn to share my story, my words. Like, he can't be hidden anymore. Like, I'm going to share this. And if it touches one person, like, I really hope it does. And I hope it allows them to find that courage that they can share their story as well. I will say though, after I like recorded all that with them, I think I freaked out and I texted the producers and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this now. Like delete it all. But she's like, just breathe, like sleep on it if you really want to, like totally okay. But know that you are gonna touch someone out there. So I was like, okay, like let's try it. And I received so many positive messages and a lot of people have reached out. I feel like I've connected with a lot of people, talking them through certain situations and things that they've gone through, which really touched my heart. I didn't really realize how big of a reach I had until now.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I think that it is important to have maybe sometimes those moments that, like you said, light that fire that get you motivated and help you feel. I mean, that is a form of empowerment of knowing that someone maybe did not face the consequences for what they did, but having the opportunity to share your story to raise the awareness, I think is a great way to use those moments. And both of y'all did that in really powerful ways. And I am curious, Shonda, you touched on this a little bit, and Alexis, it sounds like your family was a big support, but I'm curious, what type of support did y'all receive after the fact, both from the organizations, whether it was the Miss Kansas organization and your team, whether it was the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, like what type of support was available for y'all after that moment, and what are maybe what is something that other organizations or programs could take from that for them to be able to support survivors when they're sharing their story?
Yeah, for me, being Miss Kansas, a big part of that role, the special thing is that everybody's going to have a different platform that they come with. For me, it was something very tough, very vulnerable. And so it took a long time for me and my organization to feel or figure out a way that we were going to be able to connect with each other and be able to provide that space, because it was every single day that I was going and sharing my story multiple times a day. And so that was, not every conversation is going to be about Miss Kansas. Not every conversation is going to be about my abuse. There has to be space for us to be able to talk about other things, because this isn't my singular identity. It's just a big part of what's happening in my life right now. It was also with my family and friends, finding different ways to connect with one another aside from Miss Kansas and everything that's happening. And then also seeing a life coach and a therapist to really unpack the trauma that I did endure, especially because there was this highlight on it constantly. And as you mentioned, it was everywhere on social media platforms. And I mean, every single one of us are on social media every single day. And so it's not easy to see some of the comments and some of the things that were being said about me and my abuse and being questioned on the reality and the truth, or even being put on blame or at blame for the abuse that some people have never even heard my story in depth before. And so it truly was having those tough conversations and finding safe spaces in the individuals that were most close to me, and finding that safe space within myself of how much I was willing to share at different times.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Shandi, what kind of support did you receive?
I received a lot of support, which was amazing. I didn't know that that was going to happen, honestly. So a lot of people online were very supportive. My family was. I never really opened up about it to them, like fully in depth. I think they got to watch it and process it the same way the rest of the world did. Um, but I think that also brought us closer because it was like, and I think I said it somewhere. I was like, it was almost therapeutic in a way to watch it back and be like, oh my gosh, okay, I did that. Like, I'm proud of myself. I'm watching like a different Shandi form. But with the organization, I did kind of talk to Kelly and Judy a long time before, like when it first happened, just like mentioning what I was going through. I never really went into depth about it. The NFL does have a great hotline where you can talk to a therapist. We're only allowed to have 6 free sessions, and when you're just a little cheerleader, you're like, okay, I can't, like, 6 is good enough. I guess I'll just spread it out because I can't really afford anything else. But as our organization has evolved, they actually have an amazing team doctor now. She put me in touch with the therapist I have now, who I adore. I'm in love with. She's amazing. Like, she's helped me break through so many different things. So they've done a great job with evolving with mental health, with just having someone to talk to about anything and everything. And I think like the last thing I said in my end of the year um, review interview thing was, I think that this should be offered to everyone on the team, whether they need it or not. Just make it more known so that someone who might be struggling with something else or unfortunately the same thing just has that resource to talk to. So I think I helped hopefully start something as I was leaving as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think that that is one of the things that often comes when people share their stories is we raise awareness that others are experiencing something that is painful, that is traumatic. It also helps people maybe recognize gaps in the system or where there maybe could be more support, what support is really good and what to like elevate. And so I think it can be a for a learning moment for everyone involved, both the people who share and those who are hearing the information, who are supporting the person experiencing that. So yeah, I think that's really great. And I'm curious, Daniela, kind of as a media person on the other side, like what have you seen that has been positive ways to support maybe survivor as they're sharing their story, or if you are interviewing someone and they're talking about abuse, are there things that you have seen that are beneficial and helpful for those people and supporting them?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jake. I would say a few things. One is having a conversation with the survivor about the parameters of their story that they do want to share, how they want to be identified. Some survivors sharing their stories could be putting their lives at risk or still in danger, which you'd want to take really seriously. Um, Asking them what questions are completely off the table, and then it's our job as the go-between to talk to the reporter, because again, most reporters who are covering this are not intentionally trying to be stigmatizing or feed into disinformation or create harm. They care and they want to help, but they might not know and have this direct experience or be trauma informed. So talking to them about how what the parameters are, what questions are off the table, how to identify the survivor, giving a survivor perhaps access to a story before it runs, which is not something they would typically do. And then I think a broader reporter education that would hopefully make a survivor feel a bit more comfortable is encouraging them to connect the story to systems and the larger problems at play. Because, of course, we want to focus on the survivor's story, but reporters have a responsibility who are covering this to help debunk the disinformation that comes and the tropes and stereotypes that comes around survivors. And if they simply tell a story without connecting the larger dots, people will fill in those dots for themselves and often might unintentionally or intentionally fall back into a victim blaming mentality just because that's the narrative and the culture that we exist in. So we need to go that extra mile to explain why, in a systems and structures way, this is continuing to happen. And then also, I would lastly say to offer some resources, because survivor storytelling is so important, because someone reading it might be realizing for the first time that they're in an unsafe situation or also a survivor, which can be a very triggering experience, but also they'll need resources on knowing where to go to get the help that they need.
Thank you for that. I think that those are all really great ways to support survivors in the moment. And I think it is really helpful to, like you said, connect it to larger systems and the larger problem that we see happening, because domestic violence is a public health issue. It is something that, unfortunately, the vast majority of people either have experienced it or know someone who has experienced it. It touches all of us in a way. And so I do think what you're saying about connecting it to the larger story, to the systems that impact people and how we think about abuse is really important. And that leads really perfectly into my next question. That I think Daniela, you'll be able to provide some great insight into it. But, what role does the media play in how we talk about domestic violence, whether it's social media, interviews, podcasts, TV shows, like how does that impact how we view abuse? And how can individuals, people at organizations help shape that narrative in a more positive, responsible way?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have two amazing storytellers with us here today with different platforms. There are so many different ways we're hearing these stories, either through scripted television and movies, reality shows where people share personal stories, people sharing their stories on personal platforms. And they can have negative or positive impacts depending on how they're framed. So I think some of the negative stuff is it could, and this is how it's packaged, not from a survivor sharing their story, but um a scripted show, for example, they could be unintentionally increasing stigma, lifting disinformation, they could have unintentionally triggering content. But the flip side of that is that people will feel seen and understood for the first time. They might encourage them to get help. It could provide pathways for sharing ways to seek help without putting yourself in further danger. It can help your support systems understand how to act appropriately and safely and know how best to speak with you and show up in a supportive way. It could also, to Shandi's point earlier, help put some public pressure on law enforcement to take it more seriously, build some public momentum and mobilization around policies that will protect survivors. So there's so many ways that impacts us. I think there are ways that we can, as organizations who work in this space, either work behind the scenes with producers or writers on how best to do this, because again, I believe most of them are not trying to create harm by telling this story. Or if, these are hard people to access, having a platform and public commentary to comment and give guidance on what they're doing, and, leaning into your expertise and why you are someone who is worthy of their time and attention, especially if they've created a whole program or platform focused on this issue.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that that is all very important information and important to recognize that whether it is an individual sharing their story, putting pressure on someone, raising awareness, whether it's educating journalists or producers of TV shows, that we all do have a role to play in changing that narrative and turning it into a more positive and survivor-centered and accurate narrative. And I think that that is really important. And I am curious, kind of going off of that, Alexis and Shandi, you both have talked about using your platform to kind of change that narrative, to raise awareness, to educate people on abuse and on the stigmas or the challenges that people experience. And I'm curious, how has that been? Do you feel that people respond positively to it? Do you ever get pushback from someone who disagrees with what you're saying and does try to like negate your experience? Yeah, I'm curious how that has been for y'all, kind of help as you've helped shape the narrative and our understanding of abuse.
I would say overall it has been positive. I think it's really hard to hear someone's experience and try and debunk their own personal experiences. So I would say overall, by sharing examples of what I've been through, I've been able to connect with other individuals that have had similar experiences, and want to actually share those experiences. And many people tend to ask, you're so brave, you're so strong for being in this position. How do you get there? And, I just tell them sometimes it's just starting with the individuals that are close to you, and you get to decide the way that you want to be able to share your story, whether it's going to just be within those interpersonal connections or whether, you want to take that step forward and go to social media. But it's also knowing that you're not always in control of the other individuals that are in that space. So to be ready for potentially anything that could come your direction that could also be negative, and not allowing anybody else to debunk your own personal experiences, and standing strong and firm in your truth, not only for yourself, but for others that have other individuals that may debunk their experiences as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Shandi, how's that been for you?
Um, Kind of piggybacking what Alexis said is just like you always have to be ready for negativity. People, there are bad apples in the world and they're always going to try and bring you down. But I've never really big on social media. But this past year I was like, you know what? I'm here. I have it. Like, let me use it for good and just put my story out there. Like, people can listen and watch if they want to. I hope they do. But luckily, everyone's been very positive, and there are a lot of nice people out in the world who are very caring and very nurturing. And I think just being able to share my experience on social media and everywhere else has been a privilege, and connecting. It's like a different type of connection you have with others now. And I've made a lot of friends and acquaintances through social media where we can just talk about it freely, where we can check in with each other. And I think that's the beauty of social media, and I think that's what it should be used for. And I'm really happy that most of the world is seeing it that way and seeing how we can take someone else's story as well and either be strong enough to share your own or be brave enough to share that person's story and stand up and be an advocate as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing about the positive ways that social media can be used and how it can be something that connects us, that helps people see themselves and better understand their own situation, the ways that it does help connect you to a support system and people who have gone through a similar experience and have the same viewpoint and opinion of it as you do, and people who are wanting to work with you to educate others and like offer that support. And so I do think it's always nice to hear positive ways that social media is used and the how it can be used for good. And so yeah, thank y'all for sharing that. Um, my next question is a bit more general, but I am curious, part of this conversation has been about sharing your story, talking about your experience. And so I'm curious, like, what advice would y'all give to someone who's maybe wanting to share about their experience with abuse, whether it's on social media, with a friend, a family member, talking about it at work? What kind of advice would y'all give someone who's wanting to do that, but maybe doesn't know how or the best way for them? Yeah.
My advice, because it really is hard, I would say take some time to really analyze your own personal story, analyze those emotions, find a way to articulate those emotions in a way that makes you feel safe and makes you feel comfortable, and to know that it's okay one day to feel extremely empowered and want to share this story, and for the next day to say, you know what, actually, I think I need some space and to back down a little bit. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you are not powerful in your own story. It's just the reality and the waves of emotions of survivorship storytelling. And don't let anybody push you to go further than what you're ready to share. Um, and truly, I mean, just stand in your truth in your own time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was perfect. But basically just do it on your own time. There's no timeline to sharing anything with anyone that you do or don't want to share anything with. You can never share the full thing until you're completely ready. It could take years. It took me years to finally share it, and there are still some days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to take a step back because I'm getting overwhelmed again. And you just need to really stand in your own emotions, know your limits, and know like it's okay to go back in therapy and like be like, hey, we need to take a few steps back. I need to re-talk about this. I need to really open this back up again. Um, and just really surround yourself with people who you trust and you can lean on. I think even when I started opening up about it, I did it little by little, like to my family or my friends. I would only share like little things. And I was like, okay, that's all I can do right now. Like, that's as much that I can give at this moment. But it helps. It really helps the survivor get it out, and they're doing it on their own time. So it's a win for them, and you just know not to push them, or else. I mean, for me, like I always go back in, like I close back up if I'm going to be pushed. So it's just kind of like little steps and steps that you can take, but know that it's totally okay to take your time on this.
Yes, I think that is a very important point. And like you both said, that it's important to know what you're comfortable with, what you're ready for, and it's okay that that changes because how we feel on a day-to-day basis changes. Our thoughts can change pretty quickly, so I think it is important to recognize that. And I am curious, Daniela, as someone who is maybe talking to survivors as they're sharing their story and they are maybe uncertain of how much to share, what to share, things like that. Like what advice do you have, or what do those conversations look like from your end when you're maybe hearing what someone is sharing or you're helping them tell their story?
Yeah. Um, Firstly, I think I would talk to them about their parameters in terms of what they're comfortable sharing and not sharing. Even with me, they don't have to tell me their story and the parts they don't want to share so that whatever they're comfortable sharing with me, and then making clear that we have parameters around what they're comfortable sharing externally with other people that will be more consumed on a public platform. Another thing, though, that I don't think people name as much is timing. Like this, the internet is forever. Like when you share your story, you kind of lose control over how it's going to be used and shared and commented on, even if it's in a positive way. Or someone coming back to you, years down the line and saying, I saw you share your story. Would you be willing to talk to me about this in a different press outlet or on TV? Or, so there is the reality that that will be out there, and they're ensuring that they have a comfort level with that or the space and time to think about that, as well as ensuring that they have an emotional support system in place, that they, have gotten access to therapists, have a close support system with their families and friends, like that this isn't the first time sharing their story on such a public platform. And then buffering around any opportunity where they do speak, ensuring they have just like some space in their calendar to regulate and process. And, you're not going to try and have them do 10 interviews in a day, being mindful of their experience and their availability. But I think timing and parameters and emotional support.
Yeah, I think that that is really important. I think your point that the internet is forever and that people can revisit videos you have shared years ago and bring something up that people can, you know, share your video with them being a side by side and commenting on it. Like there are a lot of things that you have to kind of think about when you're sharing your story. And so I think that is an important thing to just for people to be aware of. And so I am curious, we've gotten some questions in the chat that I kind of that are connected to this. And so I'm curious, what, how have y'all, when sharing your story, what considerations did you take for your safety? You know, whether that is a previous partner trying to locate you based off of things, someone wanting to, I mean, getting angry that you're sharing your story. Like, are there steps or actions that y'all have taken to think about your emotional safety, your physical safety and well-being? Um, yeah, and how have you found the balance of sharing your story very publicly, but still remaining private? If, yeah, you want to
Yeah,
share.
that sharing public and remaining private is very hard. I will say, right after Miss Kansas, about a month or so, I think it was about a month after Miss Kansas, I was finally able to get a protection order, which was the most difficult process that I could have imagined for that. Especially with the video, I was like, oh, surely, this is some great evidence to be able to help with that. But it took, I think the process took over 6 weeks just to get a court date because of how frequently he moved around. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing. And I remember going to court and the judge giving him basically just reading along what everything looks like, giving him his options. It was to go ahead and grant me the protection order, and he would have to leave me alone for 1 year. And his response continuously was, oh, just 1 year? Oh, I can just do 1 year. That's okay. Over and over and over again. And so being in the position of Miss Kansas, where you have a Miss Kansas car, you have a Miss Kansas apartment, your role as Miss Kansas is to promote the organization, promote the sponsorship. That was one of my biggest fears is repercussions of going and sharing the story continuously with this individual who I was continuously in legal battles fighting just for some kind of form of protection, what that would look like. And unfortunately, it looked like getting a job at my cousin's high school, somewhere that he knew was my outlet, for me to be able to enjoy a safe space with my family on my time off. It was him being able to walk downtown where my apartment was, me calling the police, but them saying, well, you live downtown. We can't tell an individual that he's not allowed to walk the streets of downtown. So that's kind of what that looked like for me. And even to this day, it's ensuring that before I'm doing an event, before I'm doing a keynote speech, I'm not sharing that destination before the event. I'm not sharing anything until after.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and for being so honest about the challenges that you face and the how hard it is to, like you said, even get a court date and how that oftentimes doesn't stop people. They continue to harass, they continue to cause problems, and that, the sad reality that there's not always a lot of protections for survivors. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing the ways that you kind of have to take care of yourself as you were going through that and continue to have to take care of yourself and kind of protect yourself and your safety. Shani, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, so I'm still a little like scared going out as well. I got a protective order after the first time it kind of happened. So it was a little bit like, okay, there's something there, I guess, like some type of piece of paper buffer. But as Alexis, like you're around, people know who you are, they know exactly where you are. They like my practice schedule is always the same. I lived at the place we had practice at. Like you always knew where I was. Um, and he would love to push those limits. He would love to always be seen running. Like I was like, this guy never ran. Like until now, until he's running around my apartment. So when I finally moved, I was like, I never went out. I always got everything delivered. My groceries, my everything. Like I remember I tried to go to the grocery store once and I saw his car there and I was like, okay, that was never again. Um, he would push the boundaries with when I got my new apartment, he got an apartment that was just outside like the 500 yards. So it was like he's so near, but like I can't do anything because he's not technically. I don't know. It was just a lot. So I ended up moving. So I do feel a smidge better now, a little bit safer. But there's always that lingering feeling like I feel like he's watching me, or like whenever I pass the car he drove, I'm like, oh my gosh, is that him? Like this is scary. Like I got a new car. I had to do all these things, and it's like it's so unfair how the victim always has to change and flip their life around because someone else. And I think I mean, I don't know if I'll ever feel completely 100% safe. That person has just scarred you forever, but the fact that you can do things to try and make yourself feel safer, um, I'm happy that there are those steps you can take. Um, but yeah, people like to push the limits for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that and again for being very honest about it. And it's incredibly heartbreaking and sad that people will push those limits and do what they can to intimidate someone, to remind them of the pain that they have caused, the way that they will push boundaries that you have put in place, that the law has put in place. And it's hard and it is a very taxing and draining experience, I'm sure. And so I am curious, like, what are things that have been helpful for y'all in processing all of those feelings that come up in those moments, whether it's you see a car drive by that is the car they drove, or that they have moved in nearby. I mean, it brings up a lot of emotions. And so I'm curious, like, what steps have y'all taken to process those emotions and help kind of work through all of that and what advice you would give to someone who is trying to figure out the same thing or going through a similar situation.
I'm still learning how to process those emotions, to be completely honest. Um, I always have my safe individuals that I can call whenever I don't feel safe. I have close contact with our community centers here. that whenever I just need to talk to an advocate and just express those emotions in a way that I know my family and friends wouldn't understand in the way that they do, I absolutely utilize those resources. Because, I mean, as we've mentioned, it comes in waves. And so there's sometimes where you may feel incredibly empowered, and there's other times where the fear overshadows that a bit. And so, unfortunately, we can't always control the behaviors of, well, you can't control the behaviors of other individuals and what they're going to do. So just standing in my own power and seeking those safe individuals to really bring that back into peace.
Some advice I have, I guess, um, similar to Alexis, right? I always have that person that I know I can call and that will show up and be there. Um, Whenever I do go out somewhere, I always try and go with someone. Um, if not, I always have like my like mace or anything like that. I mean, we're also just girls, so you kind of need that anyway. But um, other than that, I will say like I have. It's taken me years. Like it's been 3 years since it first happened. Um, but I have tested it where it's like, okay, let me drive past this grocery store now. Like, let me see what I feel after that. Okay, let me like go and park there, like get gas and just try and feel my emotions. Um, so when I'm ready to, and like I have that courage and that strength, I can be like, okay, like I got it. Like if he's there, he's on like my property now, like he can't do anything about it. And to me that was just kind of like, okay, I won. Like I'm better than that. Like you can't get to me anymore. So it's just like it takes time obviously, but just trying to find that courage, and it's gonna take time. Like it took me 3 years, but um continuing to push through and continuing therapy. Therapy has really helped me um, tremendously. So I would just suggest that as well. Just having someone other than your safest people to talk to, because sometimes it's easier to talk to someone you don't know. Um, that's like my advice, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that that is really great advice, and it does show that it comes in waves. There are times where maybe you're feeling stronger. The fear is less because you've been able to go by a store and you feel more comfortable there, or because you have these safe people that you can talk to. You have resources that you can reach out to get support and help with processing. I think that is all very important. And I will, in this moment, just make a plug on the Hotline's website. We do have a database, a directory of programs and resources, including counseling, that people can look for counseling services in their area, support groups in their area if they would like that, legal assistance, all manner of things. So knowing that those resources are out there, that people can reach out for different types of support is really helpful. And I am curious, Daniela, if you could share a little bit of, you talked earlier about when you're talking to a survivor or working with them, you will share resources with them or help them know what services are available. Are there certain programs you often suggest people reach out to, or what types of support are you able to offer?
I mean, and being such close partners with the hotline, and knowing your work and how trusted your brand is, and how much you all are experts, I most often refer folks to you all, but also not just for survivors, but for reporters as well. Anytime you see a TV episode where there's something potentially triggering, and then there's a resource at the end, making sure that reporter stories also have that component, talking about the topic, not just because it can be triggering, but because people can see themselves in it in the first time, because there's so much manipulation and that happens, and gaslighting to make you not see what is actually happening. And so if you see yourself in a story, coming to terms with it the first time can be very jarring. And so making sure any story, or even if it's shared on social media or a blog, any sort of content, comes with a resource. And most often for me, it has been the hotline.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, So we are getting towards the end of the webinar, and we've gotten a lot of really great questions in the chat that I wish we could get to, but I don't want to keep people here too long. And so I think, I think that it is always important to know the challenges that people go through, the difficulties they experience, the pain that people experience when they're experiencing abuse, and hearing you all share about your experience, sharing about the things that have been really helpful for you, difficulties you still have in the moment, the thoughts on how to process the heavy emotions that come up, talking about safety. I think that is all such important information, and I'm very grateful that all of y'all were here and willing to share with us, and continue to share with us. And so I'm very grateful for that. I kind of want to end with one last question. To wrap it up a bit, because we are nearing the end of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We have about a week left. And so I would love to hear from y'all, what is one thing you would encourage the audience to do during DVAM, and also once DVAM is over, because it is with survivors always, not with survivors during DVAM. And so, yeah, I'm curious what would help you feel good, or what you would like to encourage the audience to do this month and moving on.
So for me, this month is skewed on acknowledging domestic violence as a whole. It's becoming educated on what domestic violence is, what it looks like, what healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationships and characteristics are, educating others, and acknowledging that it's one thing to know, but it's another thing to intentionally live by it. And so the way that we actually break cycles of abuse is for us to take that power into our own hands and intentionally create these healthy relationships and call out unhealthy and abusive behaviors by the individuals that we feel safe enough to do so, and that are within our circles as well.
Thank you.
I guess I just encourage everyone to speak their truth, be true to themselves, and really find your inner circle. Really educate yourself if you're a survivor or an advocate, just on domestic violence as a whole, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal. There's so many different types of abuse that unfortunately people endure. And if we can just take a step further this year with this month and next year we can come back to this and be one step better, like that's just showing that we can make an impact and we do all have voices. And I want to encourage people to stand up for what they believe in, stand up for those who have unfortunately been through this or anything. Our voices do matter, and that there's always going to be people who back you up no matter what.
Yeah, thank you.
Jake, do you want me to answer this, or are you
Yeah,
wrapping?
please.
Oh, okay.
Please.
It was like such a beautiful place to wrap, and now I'm gonna have a little technical answer. But I would say, for DVAM, if you are on the service providing side and working with your media teams, I think that it's an opportunity to do some outreach, to pitch, to do some reporter education, to DM that person who shared their story and thank them, and see if you can be a resource to them. Um, Give a shot at emailing a show that's talked about it in a way that's either been positive or not. Like, it may surprise you. They are receptive to this kind of like issue area expertise. And then moving forward, I would just say to set up some strategy and best practices and internal decisions on how to do this, how to leverage, I hate to say pop culture moments, but stories of survivors that are shared widely. And, every once in a while, there's a case of a, quite famous person that gets sensationalized and maybe isn't always covered in the best way. But taking that opportunity, or any opportunity where survivors like Shandy and Alexis share their story, to see the narrative that we want to see, and uplift their voices.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that all of your answers really highlight what it takes to stand with survivors. It involves speaking from the heart, being true, being with people emotionally, physically, helping them. And it also involves the technical side. It involves reaching out and writing a letter to your editor or emailing someone because you think the way they talked about abuse was not accurate. And so it involves all of those things. And I think that all of y'all really highlighted the importance of doing it in community. We are not in this alone. We all are impacted by this issue. And so we all have a role to play. And it's important for us to work together and to let survivors know they're not alone and that other people are there advocating for them, willing to support them and be there for them. So thank you all for sharing that. Thank you for being part of this conversation. I learned a lot. I really appreciated it. And I'm just grateful for y'all's willingness to share. I know it can be hard and it brings up a lot of things. And so I am very grateful that y'all are willing to do that. And thank you, audience, for joining us. DVAM is not over yet. And so you can follow the hotline on social media to learn more about what we're doing this DVAM. I would recommend go follow Alexis, follow Shandi, follow Spitfire. They're all great people who can offer just an incredible amount of education and really wonderful perspectives. So yeah, I'm really glad that we got to have this, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your month. Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much.